Hey, Judge Napolitano here. Special for all my TikTokers, all my TikTok friends. Thank you for listening and thank you for your questions. Thank you for watching. And I'm here for you. So I'll do my best to answer your questions whenever you send them to us. We got a lot of response and a lot of inquiry to my comments yesterday about the not guilty verdict in the Michael Sussman trial. So a little bit of background. Michael Sussman was prosecuted by the independent counsel in Connecticut, appointed by Bill Barr, the last Senate-confirmed Attorney General in the Trump administration. Some people say Bill Barr did the right thing by appointing someone who was independent to investigate the origins of the Trump-Russia mystery persecution of Donald Trump. Some people think he did the wrong thing by sort of putting a time bomb in the midst of the Biden Justice Department. In any case, John Durham, who is the U.S. Attorney for Connecticut, is also the independent prosecutor charged by former Attorney General Barr to get to the bottom of Russiagate. Some people think that Donald Trump did have connections with Vladimir Putin and with Russia, and provided information to the Russians, and that resulted in the hacking of Hillary Clinton's emails. Some people think he had no connections. We all know that there were about 127 phone calls between the Trump campaign and Russian intelligence during a 16-month period. That's a lot. But we also know that Donald Trump was not charged and was not indicted for any crime. In fact, the only people charged by Bob Mueller were people who were around Trump but really had nothing to do with this. Like Roger Stone was charged with lying to a congressional committee. He was tried. The trial was very unfair. He was convicted. President Trump commuted his sentence, and then after Election Day, pardoned him outright. John Durham has charged 3 people. One, Kevin Kleinsmith, a young lawyer in the FBI, pleaded guilty to falsifying a document that was submitted to the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, in order to persuade the court to issue a search warrant of one of Trump's foreign policy advisors. The guilty plea resulted in 6 months of probation. Second person he charged was Michael Sussman, about which more in a moment. Third person he charged, and I say he charged, grand jury's indicted. The federal system, you need an indictment. Unless you're pleading guilty at the moment of the charge, then you don't have to bother with the indictment. The third person that he charged is a Russian national who is accused of espionage and obtaining campaign funds by illicit means and funneling them to Trump. That trial's coming up in a couple of weeks. The Sussman trial is what I'll talk about now. Michael Sussman was a lawyer for Hillary Clinton's campaign and for the Democratic National Committee. He called up his longtime friend Jim Baker, not the Jim Baker who was Secretary of Treasury and Secretary of State in the Reagan-Bush years, but a person with the same name, different person, who was general counsel, no longer is, but was general counsel to the FBI. Jim, I want to talk to you. I got some information. He goes in and he tells Baker about information connecting Trump and his campaign, Trump personally and his campaign, with a Russian bank, which is connected personally with Vladimir Putin. Now there's a dispute as to whether or not Baker said to him, "Are you here on behalf of a client?" Baker says he asked that, and Sussman said no. Sussman says it wasn't asked. Turns out Sussman was representing Hillary Clinton and representing the Democratic National Committee, so Sussman was indicted for lying to the FBI. The feds consider this a very low-level crime, and people rarely go to jail for it. People usually plead guilty to it, but a lawyer who pleads guilty to it will lose his license to practice law. So Sussman pleaded not guilty, and a trial was held. The trial was very controversial. Controversial because, in the opinion of many of you, the judge seemed to favor the defendant, which is unusual. Most judges seem to favor the government. The judge is an Obama appointee. Michael Sussman seemed to have a very unusual relationship with the FBI, whereby the FBI from time to time actually camped itself in Sussman's law firm. This is not the law firm defending him in this case, but the law firm which employed him at the time he had this approach to Jim Baker. I myself have been very critical of these laws that make it a crime to lie to the FBI. Well, of course, you shouldn't lie. You should remain silent when the FBI comes knocking. The reason I'm critical is because the FBI is permitted to lie to you. They are permitted to lie to you in the very same conversation in which they accuse you of lying to it. And that's the reason Michael Sussman was acquitted. Not because there wasn't enough evidence against him. In my opinion, the evidence of his guilt was overwhelming. There was even a text message confirming that he wasn't representing a client. But is it really a significant material matter whether he was representing a client? All right, that was ruled on by the judge who found that it is a material matter. The statute says if you lie to the FBI about a material matter and they can prove you lied, you're guilty of a felony. There's a lot of odd things that happened here. Merrick Garland performed the marriage of the judge a few years ago. Well, that means nothing. Merrick Garland wasn't the prosecutor. The DOJ wasn't doing the prosecution. The independent prosecutor, John Durham, was. I've been critical of independent prosecutors. I was critical of Mueller. I was critical of Judge Lawrence Walsh, who was the independent prosecutor in the Reagan years. And I've been critical of John Durham because they are independent. They don't answer to anybody. How can there be somebody in the government who's a rogue, who can do whatever he wants? He doesn't answer to anybody else, doesn't answer to the president, doesn't answer to the attorney general. So why was Michael Sussman acquitted if the evidence of his guilt was overwhelming? Some of you have asked if the FBI is fearful of the Clintons. I doubt that. The FBI doesn't charge people. Prosecutors charge. All the FBI does is gather evidence. In the Comey years, he made announcements. We're charging, we're not charging. That's BS. The FBI cannot charge only because a charge in the federal system has to come from a grand jury, and only a prosecutor can summon a grand jury. So if the FBI presents a pile of evidence to a prosecutor, federal prosecutor, the federal prosecutor thinks it's garbage, there's nothing the FBI can do about it. Oh, Jim Comey, in the Jim Comey years, they might hold a press conference, but there's nothing they can do to further their goal of prosecuting this person. Back to the question I asked at the outset. Why was Michael Sussman acquitted if the evidence of his guilt was overwhelming? I'll tell you why. This was a case of jury nullification. The jurors, some of whom had contributed money to Mrs. Clinton's campaign. If I had been the judge, I would not have allowed them on the jury. But the jurors were sick and tired of a case in which a person was prosecuted for lying, and the people who testified against him lied. They lied in the courtroom, but more telling than that, the FBI agents admitted that they lie all the time. They lie to suspects, they lie to subjects, they lie to lawyers, they lie to prosecutors, and they lie to each other. Jury nullification is a great thing. It basically allows 12 ordinary citizens to say to the almighty federal government, okay, you brought a case, you found a statute, you hate the defendant did what you said he did, but we really don't approve of these prosecutions, and so we're going to throw it out. That is the last line of liberty that we have in America, called jury nullification. The lawyers are not allowed to tell the jurors about it. No federal judge would permit a lawyer to do so. But most federal jurors are smart enough to know that this power exists. And in the case of Michael Sussman, good guy, bad guy, liar, truth teller, whatever he is, whatever he was, jury nullification saved